There are two things that I know to be true. One, a man who never eats pork bun is not a whole man. And two, this is the best goddamn GTA game I've ever played. Well, as of 2025. And, well, the best non-Rockstar GTA-like game. If we include Rockstar games in the mix, then probably Bully would be my favorite. Sleeping Dogs is an open-world action game published by Square Enix and made by United Front Games, which unfortunately got shut down in 2016. Originally released in 2012, Sleeping Dogs was given a definitive edition re-release in 2014. What was once an entry to Activision's True Crime series was cancelled by Activision as they were worried that they wouldn't be able to make a profit off this entry. And with the release of GTA 4, Red Dead Redemption and Saints Row III, it's not a surprise that they thought that way. But with the Hong Kong cinema-inspired action, John Woo-inspired gunplay, and vehicle hijackings, I think Sleeping Dogs have given those games a run for their money, even as the underdog of that generation. Since the original version is no longer available for purchase, unless you're willing to buy a secondhand physical copy or a key online, or, use any other means of getting the game, I'm reviewing the definitive edition of this game, which is just the same, but with some optimizations for modern systems. You play as Wei Shen, an undercover cop who returns to his homeland of Hong Kong to infiltrate the Sun On Yee, Hong Kong's biggest triad group. After a botched drug deal, Wei meets up with an old friend and low-level triad member, Jackie Ma. Once he's in, Wei begins to work both sides of the law, making his way up the Sun On Yee's ladder, whilst also taking them down from the inside. However, as one would expect, the lines begin to blur for Wei as he begins to question where he stands. It's your usual undercover cop drama, but still done quite well that it will keep your attention. There's never really a dull moment, but even during the downtime, it still helps develop the characters. Regarding the main character, Wei, personally I quite liked him. When he's on the job, he's a pragmatic, no-nonsense kind of guy, who does whatever he needs to get the job done, and isn't afraid to talk back, but knows when to hold his tongue, especially since any moment he could find himself 6 feet under. But he's not heartless, and it shows that he's constantly plagued by his career, having to live with the consequences of his actions. Now that I'm somewhat done summarizing the main plot, I'm gonna go talk about the 3 story DLC. The first is the Zodiac Tournament, the only story DLC that's accessible during the main story. Wei Shen is invited to a mysterious fighting tournament on Zodiac Island, aptly named the Zodiac Tournament, a deadly no-holds-barred competition where fighters of all styles compete to win, sponsored by the richest elites in all of Asia. As you can tell, this is obviously an Enter the Dragon homage. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's just Enter the Dragon. Still, it's a very fun and loving pastiche to the film, complete with 70s film grain vignetting, fonts and music. Nightmare at North Point is the first post-game story DLC, which is considered non-canon, but for the sake of this review, let's just say it is. It begins with Wei Shen out on a date, but just as things were going well, a ghost triad appears out of nowhere, kidnapping his date, unleashing demons upon North Point, and bringing back some of Wei's old enemies and friends. Now it's up to Wei to save North Point, the girl, and also send the dead back to the underworld. This one's a pretty fun Halloween story. Year of the Snake is the final story DLC, which is canon this time around. Enough time has passed since the main game, and Wei decides that he's ready to get back to work. Unfortunately, due to his renegade actions undercover in the Sun On Yee, he is punished by working as a beat cop, most likely due to all the broken lampposts and parking machines. With the Lunar New Year right around the corner, Wei stumbles upon a terrorist plot by a doomsday cult, and must quickly stop them before any more harm can be done. More aligned with the tone of the main game, but a little dull compared to the other 2 DLC. Based on action thrillers like the Rush Hour films, but unlike Rush Hour, the wisecracking black guy is missing, which honestly would have livened this one up a bit. So I'm not going to be around the bush. This game is pretty much just GTA but with Arkham combat. But that would just undermine this game and this review, and that's not what I want to do. There are 2 main mission types, the story and the police cases. The story missions are obviously missions that will progress the story, while police cases are multi-stage missions where Wei will help out the Hong Kong Police Department to solve cases. In addition, there are side quests like bystander requests, swap missions, drag races, and fight clubs. And in terms of activities outside of missions, well, there's gambling, karaoke, and also committing animal cruelty. During missions, there are 2 types of experience Wei gains, Triad and Police. Triad experience increases through combat and responding to QTEs quickly, while Police experience increases by following the law, ensuring that civilians don't get hurt, no public property gets damaged, and also making sure that no one sees Wei trip over himself. So as you can guess, the Hong Kong Police Department is pretty strict when it comes to its grading, especially since the slightest bump against anything will cause driving to cause a score deduction. But there's more than enough missions and side content to make sure that you max out your cop level before the end of the game. When leveling up Wei's Triad and Police experience, he will gain an experience point that he can use to unlock perks with each type. Triad experience increases his melee moves, damage resistances, and counters, while Police experience improves his efficiency with firearms and driving. There's also a third experience type, Face, which improves by complete side content. Wei's face level affects the type of clothes and cars he can buy, and the better his face level is, the more bonuses he can get. While out and about, Wei can eat, drink, and get massages to recover his health and also gain temporary bonuses such as health regen or improved damage. Even though undercover cops are meant to keep any unwanted attention away from themselves, sometimes they want to make sure they look good. Throughout Hong Kong, there are many clothing stores where Wei can change his outfits. And if you wear certain clothes of a set, Wei will also gain special bonuses, like improved experience gains or improved damage. So either you can focus on maximizing experience gains or just dress to impress the public and yourself. There are plenty of collectibles to pick up, from health shrines to lockboxes with money and clothing, to security cameras to hack to snitch on drug dealers. While you can find them on your own as you explore Hong Kong, the easiest way to find these collectibles is to go on dates with certain women you meet. All of them are pretty charming in their own way, and I'm sure some might have their favorites. But they're pretty much just one and done missions that once you finish the dates, you don't really get to see them anymore. Except for Tiffany, Not Ping, and Ileana, but that's pretty much it. I know some people aren't big on romance in games, but it would have been nice to be able to keep the dates going. Although considering that Wei keeps talking about how he's not really in the right place for a serious relationship, I suppose it makes sense. Anyways, these missions are pretty easy, and once you finish them, you're rewarded with some not so subtle implications. Driving in this game feels pretty great. The controls are responsive, balanced, and are also fast. Hell, some cars are so fast that just a light tap of the trigger makes them go off. You can do drifts to turn sharp corners, but sometimes it's better to just slow down to turn these corners, especially during missions since it's pretty easy to crash and destroy public property. Though in my experience I kind of forego the public safety aspect, especially when Wei's police experience is maxed out. When driving, Wei can ram into other vehicles, and holding the action button allows him to hijack other vehicles as well. It has an arcade-like feel, which I guess some might not be into, but for a game where there are constant high-speed chases with sharp corners and turns, it's more suitable than the simulation type of driving. As I mentioned before, combat is pretty much like Arkham's combat system. Pressing the attack button multiple times performs a combo, and holding it during the combo will cause Wei to perform a heavy attack. When enemies turn red, Wei can counter them. However, if you press the counter button early, or are already in an animation, you'll be forced to take the hit. Wei can also grab enemies and either wail on them, throw them to the ground, or drag them over to highlighted objects to perform an environmental finisher, most of which are really brutal.
Damn, Wei! What did they do to you in America, man?
Enemies with weapons can be disarmed, and their weapons can be picked up and used against them. With each successful attack and counter, the face meter on the right of the minimap will increase, and once full, Wei will enter a powered state, giving him brutal finishing animations and health regen. It should be noted that if you repeat the same moves again and again, your face meter will grow slower, and you'll gain less points for Triad score. So make sure you vary up your moves when fighting to get the most out of it. Certain enemies will have an icon underneath them, indicating their specialization. Brawlers can block attacks but are open to grabs, while grapplers will grab Wei and perform powerful throws and attacks, but are vulnerable to heavy attacks. When fighting against boss-type enemies, the main way to fight them is to wait for their counter, then attack them. The combat seems a little tedious and repetitive, but honestly it goes by quite quick, especially if you're wearing clothing with bonus sets active and ate before a fight. When exploring Hong Kong, you'll find jade statues that can be brought back to Wei's old martial arts school that will expand his moveset, which gives melee a bit more variety. As you progress through the story, guns will be introduced. The most noteworthy thing about the gunplay is that when you jump out of cover, Wei will enter bullet time, where time will slow down and open enemies up. The same thing also happens when you're driving and have the reticle aimed over an enemy's car. While I've heard some disliking the gunplay in this game, personally I didn't mind it. I mean, it's not great compared to GTA and Saints Row, but for what it's worth, it's perfectly fine on its own. Though I would have liked it if there was an option to change the reticle or at least zoom in. If you're playing with a controller, just turn on the soft lock on and aim at the enemy's heads to get a headshot somewhat often. Plus, when you level up Wei's cop level, the gunplay gets more satisfying as you jump out of cover and lengthen bullet time as you get headshots. Also, you might want to turn up the aim sensitivity because it can take a while to turn around. Finally, regarding the combat, there are also special outfits that Wei can get that will give him buffs during combat, special unique weapons, and also change his fighting style as well. These outfits used to be DLC for the original Sleeping Dogs, but have been integrated into the definitive edition at a shop in the night market. They're pretty expensive, especially the ones at the bottom of the list, but just do some side missions and you'll get more than enough money to buy them all. They're fun to use, vary up the combat, and are usually broken as fuck. Though I will say it's kind of a shame that these perks are locked to these outfits, especially the ones that change Wei's moves, but they still look pretty cool. Now that I'm done talking about the gameplay in the base game, I'll talk a little bit about the story DLC's gameplay changes, even if there isn't too much to talk about. The Zodiac tournament is just the main game, but there are statues you can collect on Zodiac Island that will power up the MMA and Muay Thai outfits. In Nightmare at North Point, Wei will gain the power to use ancient Chinese magic to exorcise demons and also use a wooden sword to destroy them. The face meter allows Wei to use his new magical abilities, unleashing spiritual flames that can ignite the demons. By clearing out Jiangxi and Yao Guai spawns and freeing trapped civilians, Wei can unlock outfits and vehicles. It's very short, taking only a little over an hour for me to finish the main story and also the side contents. It was still very fun to play, and unfortunately I can't say the same about the Year of the Snake. Fighting against the Doomsday Cult, Wei can use a taser to drain the enemy's health and also perform arrests. There are also side missions where Wei can help out citizens and remove bombs placed by the cult, but these don't unlock anything. A little longer than Nightmare at North Point, clocking at just under 2 hours, it's also rather underwhelming. I suppose that's kind of the point, as Wei's being punished to work the beat. But while it's a great action thriller, it does feel rather rushed, and there's a lot less available here, which is rather disappointing. Even after more than a decade, this game still looks incredible. Sure, its graphics aren't as high fidelity compared to modern releases, but it's still a very pretty and vivacious looking game. Though I'll admit I thought they might have downgraded the graphics like certain remasters tend to do. But having played and compared the OG and definitive editions of Sleeping Dogs, I can somewhat confidently say that there really isn't that much of a difference. Sure, there are some changes with the lighting and shading, but you can still get it pretty close to the original if you crank up the shadow resolution and anti-aliasing. The game's environments looked gorgeous, especially at night, and has aged quite gracefully. Just don't look too close at the PNGs behind the doors of closed doors. The character models can look a little dull-like at times, especially when their eyes lose their shine, but they still look fine. Overall, while the game still has some visual flaws, it's still quite nice to look at. Being set in Hong Kong, there is a lot of Cantonese spoken. While I mainly know Mandarin, I did get some of the gist of what was said, but it's not necessary to know. Just know that if someone is shouting on the streets, it's probably because of you. But if they're shouting in English, it's either sarcasm or a compliment. The voice cast in this game is packed with some pretty major stars, and they all do a pretty good job in their performances. The music in this game is also great, both the original score and the soundtrack. When I first played this, I didn't really connect with the soundtrack, mainly because Mando and Cantopop weren't really my thing. But having widened my music taste in recent years, I can appreciate it a lot more now. Though I do wish that there was an option to make your own playlist within the game, like what GTA and Saints Row does, because when you're driving, it'll mainly be the same few songs playing, so other songs don't really get much airtime. In terms of sound effects and audio mixing, it's mostly fine, although whenever there are conversations going on through the phone, the audio begins to peak. In fact, there's a mission line where Wei helps test out a Bond car, and the dialogue via the radio peaks a lot, even when adjusting the game's audio settings, so you'll want to lower the game's audio via your PC's volume mixer to prevent that from happening. I remember enjoying Sleeping Dogs over a decade ago when I was in high school, and I won't lie, I was kind of worried it wouldn't have aged well. I'm glad that I was proven incredibly wrong at that point. Though at the same time, I kind of wish I hadn't played this, because now I want more, and I know that I won't be getting any more, since United Front Games was killed during the early years of every games publisher wanting a games as a service title. It's a very solid GTA game that's a love letter to Hong Kong cinema with responsive controls and a great setting. I highly recommend this game, even more so when it goes for literal bucks. I got the definitive edition on a key site for about $3, while the game goes on sale pretty regularly on Steam and GOG for about $4. For a game from the early 2010s that's aged pretty well and goes for prices that are literally quite a steal, if you haven't played it, do give it a try.
Three, two, one. You're under arrest, asshole. Happy New Year.